before we start, a couple of reminders. First, please be mindful of your timing. This is incredibly important in WFTC, so please make sure that you guys are not over time, more than 8 minutes and 15 seconds. Please also make sure that rounds in an NPC can be competitive and can be very heated. Make sure you guys maintain decorum. If you want to have a conversation with your teammates, make sure that you guys are your voice are controlled, not over the speaker who are doing their speech in front of us, so it's audible for us. For observers, please make sure that if you guys want to record, you guys are not automatically given right to record. Make sure that you ask for consent if you want to record. If some people does not give consent, then unfortunately you are unable to do that. This is a live stream round, so please be mindful that the topic of discussion can potentially be sensitive. Please be mindful on examples that you bring on your speech. Okay? Just to make sure that everything is clear. Aside from that, good luck. Let's start the debate. To open the case of the proposition house, I would like to welcome first proposition. You may have the floor here.
In the society, there are a lot of in the society we are multicultural. In the society, we are multicultural. Like we have a lot of culture. We have a lot of culture. We have a lot of difference. We have a lot of difference in each other, and etc. Like some of us are Muslim, some of us are Christian, some of us are in the other religion, and also some of us is also in a different have a different tribes and etc. Like some of us maybe also Mandarin, and some of us maybe also Japanese, and some of us maybe also the the other some of us also maybe the other tribes and etc. And by that multicultural, a lot of tons of people suddenly giving the stereotype of certain people. Some people suddenly giving the stereotype, maybe in the other countries, some people in the other countries, some people giving stereotype for the Muslim, and Muslim is terrorist, and everything like that. And in some country, they're stereotyping some they're stereotyping tons of Asian as a Chinese, and etc. Even if Asian, not only in Chinese. And also they also stereotyping about the black people is always a criminal, and etc. And that and by that stereotype, they and by that stereotype, it make a discrimination for everyone. It make a discrimination for certain people. It make discrimination for certain cultures, certain tribe, and etc. And by that discrimination, this insurgent groups is were born. And then, but how exactly this insurgent group can be there? How is exactly this insurgent group attack, we can say attack people, and etc. So they're attacking because they got discriminated for real. Like this. When if we were discriminating, we must be feel something like, we feel like we got a bad feeling about some that their climb. We got a bad feeling about their stereotype about us. And then it must be make us like make us like wanna ourselves, wanna protect ourselves, and etc. And then so they're attacking because they want if they ain't got the discriminating, they want if they ain't got discrimination or something. Which means the government really failed to protect them. The government uh, really failed to protect them, really failed to give the equality uh, for their people, and etc. And then welcome to our argument. Here we got to be a people that we want to prove that first is why the government have moral obligation to not to violence them, and second is why it's better for our side in the end of the day. But and then I will I will I will tell about the goals about our goals here. Our goals and status is really clear here that we want to give in the value of the human rights and living. We want to get the value of the human rights, and we want if people living in the earth without discrimination and etc. without attacking and etc. So firstly, I will explain about our BOB point first. Why the government have moral obligation to no, thank you. Why the government have more obligation to not to violence them. First, government need to make sure everything is equal for the society. Like as the government, we have the job that we need to make sure that every people in our country get no discrimination. Every people in our country living in peace. Every people in our country live live in a condition where where everyone is comfortable, and etc. And etc. And we believe that if we believe that if we propose this motion, like if we support this practice of granting political power to violence and group, it can make uh, it can make the discrimination getting bad, because it can make discrimination getting bad because as the government instead of as the government instead of make everything is clear, instead of make everything problem, every discrimination is clear, we attack them, and etc. And we believe that that's not good for on the end of the day. And then I will explain why it's better for our side in the end of the day. So we realize in our side we support attacking practice, but we need to realize why they can attacking the authority. Like what I said before, they're attacking the authority because of the discrimination, because they got a discrimination, etc. And then instead of violent them, we believe that we can have a talk with them. We can help them to solve their problem. We can have a cup of coffee with them and asking and asking about their attacking, and etc. About why they can get why they attack them, why they how they got the discrimination, and etc. As a government, we really need to solve the problem. Uh, as the government, we really need to solve the problem. As a government in certain country, we need to do. We need to think everything about our people. We need to think everything about people's comfort and etc. So in country, there's no one attacking each other, because this insurgent group also don't want to hurt other, but in the status quo they must because they got the discrimination. They must because they are the one who got harmed, and then attacking people back. Attacking people back is a must for them, so they can survive. So they can protect themselves. So they can living in a peace also. And that's why as a government, as a proposition team, we do really support this motion that this House oppose the practice of granting political powers to violence insurgent group in developing country. Proud to oppose.
So much for that speech. First talk spent 7 minutes and 18 seconds. Now to open the case of opposition, I would like to welcome first up. You may have the floor, speaker.
Panels noticed that the government clearly misunderstands about the spirit of this motion. Spirit of this motion, we believe that let's reframe a lot of their characterizations. Yes, we believe that the spirit of this motion is about how in the status quo there are already stable political parties, stable political decisions, hard decisions by the superpowers of the developing country, for example, which then, for example, in manifest in dynasty, totalitarian, and a lot of unfairness in the status quo in itself in the developing country. It is unlawful for minorities. It is even unlawful for those who are non-minorities, because, and that's why we believe that we will support these insurgents to rise and oppose. But how are they going to be opposing this motion? Several rebuttals first. Firstly, okay, we believe, yes, we agree that the government has a moral obligation to protect the stereotypes, but their side don't even give a proper explanation on how this could be happening in their side. Let's actually flip this. We believe that it is better in our side because we believe that government in the status quo actually just discriminate against your human rights, for example, by creating laws that doesn't cater to minorities, by creating laws that is unjust, for example. This is why the insurgents is really needed in the status quo. Second reason though, we believe that the stereotype people that the team proposition is trying to bring will find more justice in insurgent itself rather than relying on the government to actually make all those laws about them because they're already irrational to begin with. There are already a lot of political dynasty, totalitarian that happened in the status quo, so that's why we believe that their side will not defend the stereotypes better. How will government fulfill these obligations? How will they oppose? It's not explained by the government team. And even if it's going to be an explanation about that, we believe that our side will still be better because of several reasons. Moving on my setup and things. Okay, so firstly, what is happening in the status quo right now, and why do we actually need these insurgents groups to rise and oppose them? As I stated before, political stable, unstable, the hard decisions that is created by the superpowers of the country, for example, and it's unlawful for minorities and the stereotypes groups. Yeah, we believe that the democracy in itself, in the status quo, is imperfect and has a lot of oligarchy in it. For example, let's take the Democratic Party of Indonesia, for example, that has a lot of that has, for example, has a lot of violence upon human rights, a lot of dynasty, a lot of totalitarianism. This is the reason for insurgents. This is the reason of the laws that it exists in not available in actually prevailing the status quo in itself. Therefore, according to remediation, the parliament should allow the insurgents to have a voice in itself. Let's actually characterize the insurgents in our side. We believe that, okay, they attack authorities for a reason, not indiscriminately, not like a terrorist group, for example, that harms everyone that they see. We believe that that's not the case. But secondly, on the characterization of insurgents itself, we believe that they bring bargaining power if we actually grant political power to, for example, if we gain their voice in parliament, for example. And why this bargaining power is important, I'm going to explain later in my arguments. Okay, they arise. Thirdly, characterization, they arise because of the unjust nature, because of the law that is created not to cater to the minorities, for example, because the government is already irrational in itself, and let alone the people, and we believe that it's going to arise from that. Even if they're going to bring extreme views, the point is to improve democracy, the point is to actually bring better laws to the government in itself. But how will this actually manifest in our side as my next setup? We believe that we will give them a chance in parliament, for example, in create political parties and let the citizens decide on what to follow and what to not. We will believe that they will have a voice in parliamentary before there's a democratic means, for example, like giving the people to decide on what to do and whatnot. The other mechanism is not available, is not as effective, and actually this is the only way about how you can actually manage to bring better laws and bring cater to the minorities and the stereotype groups as I've stated before. So, what is the matters that we're going to fulfill in this debate? It's two reasons. Firstly, why we have to prove that it's stopping violence by actually giving them the political power in the parliamentary, for example. And secondly, how it is still justified to give them political power, and that is our burden to prove in this debate. Okay. Nextly, moving on to my argument. We believe that we will fulfill the principle of democracy in itself, which we will focus on the parts of representation and accountability, for example. But what is principle of democracy? We believe that it has three representation, participation, and accountability, but we believe that we will fulfill two of them. But why is it important to uphold? Why is it very in urgency of this motion to actually uphold this democracy in itself? Firstly, the developing country, the rulers of the developing country has no real source of democracy other than people voting for their leaders, for example, not by people affecting the laws that they make, and we believe that this is harmful. There's an unjust mechanism by people only allowing them to vote. At least our side is better because there is someone who acts as a bargaining power, who threatens the gov, for example. There's the one They're the one who control everything, which made the rise of the insurgents. But why is this likely? Why is the principle of democracy will fulfill in our side? Firstly, government is faced with bargain power with the existence of the insurgent groups in the parliamentary in itself. They're faced they're faced with fear about how they could not cater to they do not make laws that is cater to the minority group, for example, to the insurgent group itself. Secondly, though, people are influenced. There's already a setting narrative and trend in the developing country to not believe the government to actually just trust on the decisions that is made by the government, for example, in Indonesia and Philippines, one of those Muslim parties itself. Therefore, it is likely to do better in our case. Therefore, the government will gain pressure from both sides. Firstly, from the existence of the insurgents group in itself, and second, the people that's getting more brave because the existence of the insurgents in itself, and that's getting the voices in democracy, for example. But why will we ensure that could be better? We will that it's be better because of the extreme views that is not had by anyone. This is the characterization of the insurgents itself, which they had extreme views that not had by anyone, so that topic sensitive topics and a lot of unraised topics in the country of developing country which often get hidden by the rulers of the developing country itself will easily be fulfilled, will be more given exposure to the people in itself. Secondly, this will be better because we'll ensure that they won't harm because they're rising for the minority itself. We believe that they won't harm the majority because if they want to get voted, if they want to actually want their vote to be accounted for, we believe that they has to cater for everyone. Therefore, this is very important. Violence will not happen in our side. We will that we will give them representation, but the minority itself, how will we actually fulfill the principle of democracy in terms of minority, in terms of actually giving the representation for minority? For example, we have explained before that insurgents arise from the minority groups that's pressed by law and the people in the world, so that we believe that by giving them an actual chance to have a voice, even to at least make a contribution in the parliamentary itself, is still be beneficial in our side. But why it is actually be benefiting, why is actually our principle will bring more tangible benefits. Firstly, we believe that we will bring better laws to minorities and majorities in itself, because we believe that they have their bargaining power, they're threatening the government by having their existence in the parliament, for example, that we believe that they will create better laws, or else they would just get protested, or else violence would happen. Secondly, it has more accountability on the government itself to actually do their job and to actually not allow laws that is stereotypical to the people. Not, this is not something that that the government can gain. But why? But why can we ensure that this can stop their violence? Because they have, we have explained to you over and over, but how they get, and they have to ensure themselves to actually get chosen to have what they want. But even if violence going to happen, even if opposition a government going to argue about why people will care to them at the first place, my second speaker is going to talk to you about that. Parliament is very harmful in the status quo in government side, therefore insurgent rising, there's going to be chaos. And with our side, we believe that we fulfill better metrics to the principle of democracy itself because we are giving them a chance to do and to create laws properly that's not going to harm the minority and majority in this case. This is why very, very proud to oppose.
Thank you for that speech. First, off 20 minutes and 15 seconds. Now let's end this off proposition. I would like to welcome the second speaker from, and I have the floor.
How to start it? I'll start. All right. Panels realized that insurgent group exists because of insurgent group exists because of some of kind of things that probably happened that they were exist. But then why we are opposed to then granting them political power for these violent insurgent groups in developing country? Let's say developing countries still need a better improvement in their side of so rather than giving them this, rather than granting them political power to then today maybe in the other side of the house say that they can voice their minority rights. But let's say in our side of the house, instead of giving them political power, meanwhile they are already violent violent insurgent groups that already causes a lot of violence in the status quo, and then like giving a bad manifestation to the status quo. uh, in our side of the house, we're still not going to be giving them this political power because of what? First, they themselves already they of course facing the discrimination, right? But rather than giving them political power, it is better in our side of the house to then uh, to then uh, to then fix their problem first, to then fix their minority problem first, because of course when they entering the political, when we giving them political power, there's a few manifestations that can be happen. First, they will speak as if they are they will speak as if like all of the things that they are already achieved is some kind of things that are really bad, and they will and no thank you. And of course this kind of acts is not going to be effective. Instead, uh, um, uh, what why human and then to the second opinion, why human rights work in our side of the house. um, panels realize that realize that given this political power in developing country uh, with such as non unstable politics, politics condition is not gonna be work as better as how we think it should, because it's already unstable. There's a lot of things that matter to this to the status quo politics kind of things, such as power abuse, for example, and then getting them led into the political, it will only make them get more discrimination, because people think that they're only because people will think that people will think that they're entering parliamentary is only gonna be like to make them uh, to make them avoid the discrimination, but instead getting in as a minority and have to face a lot of parliamentary member, which is maybe hide them, will not gonna be ended up the discrimination. We have to actually we have to actually solve the problem of discrimination first, that can make them a violent insurgent groups, rather than granting them first in the granting them political power to then entering the political parliamentary. For example, like for example, the communication is needed, because because first of all, they are being the violent insurgent groups because of some kind of things that they already achieved, right? So when they enter in the parliamentary, they will always blame the government, and not gonna think rationally about what actually should they do in the parliamentary. Instead, when government take an action to then talk with them, to communication with them, for the emotional purpose, it can make them to understand first what is actually happened, that makes them feel like they were separated to the majority, and that what kind of things that actually make them want to be the violent insurgent groups that already against the authority, in the status quo. Of course, we understand that they're not attacking the majority. They're not attacking. Of course, we understand that they're not attacking the society. But let's just see on the point of view from other parliamentary member. Of course, there will be a possibility that they will be more and more misunderstood on how this violent insurgent groups action. So instead, no, thank you. So instead of them instead of them being there to face to voices their discrimination and to then they get their right, they will only be misunderstood, and they will only be like they will only feel like they will only feel that they will only feel like a lot of parliamentary members are facing them as the minority, and making it more bad and bad, rather than government take an action first. Why then government should how then how then uh, how then we solve this problems we how then we solve this problem without granting them political power? First, of course, the government should take an action to this violent insurgent groups, because they really have to talk first what is actually the matter, what is actually kind of things that happen in the status quo that makes them feel as a minority, rather than giving them directly the political power. When government giving them when government have a conversation with them, it can make the government to possibly know what is actually the situation happen. This kind of things, the manifestation of this kind of things is two. First, it will make the government take an action on what actually they can on what actually what actually they can do to solve this problem. And secondly, this violent insurgent groups can also exactly can also exactly deliver what is actually issue that they already that already making them being the violent insurgent groups that attacking the authority. Also, uh, uh, why actually giving them political power is only make them being more you can actually having making them to be more feel like having this violent insurgent groups to then having the political power will make them to feel like they can do anything, because they feel like, finally I can get my power. Before then they're being discrimination and being in the lower society. All right, proud to be the government.
Thank you for that speech. I can help try to make an so I finish this off, I would like to welcome
Panels in the 1700s, a man in the south of USA brought a violent march against the Confederates under the pretense of slavery. What happened next is what not a single slave was freed and everyone died. We think that we agree with side government in the fact that these insurgency groups appear because of the failure of the government, but we disagree on the fact that we can justify their violence against people who do not deserve to be violented against, and rather we would grant them some sort of political power in order for the government to understand what is actually happening to them and grant them the fact of representation in the parliament, but also provide safety for everyone inside of these developing countries so proud to oppose. Three responses on side of governments. Firstly, they claim that these insurgencies are violent in nature and therefore they cannot govern and you cannot grant them political power. Three responses. A, we didn't see the connection between this and why it is bad for you to give these, even if they were violent, why it's bad for you to give it to them anyways. But secondly, we think that at the end of the day, if you're giving them political power, you're going to be easing them to a sense of ease, and therefore you're going to be able to provide them more safety for them to be able to think rationally because you're able to provide your voice in a place where you're going to be listened to, right? But thirdly, even if they aren't going to be rational, it's good for these developing countries to have these people at the end of the day because you're going to be using that for check and balance in order for you to maintain the representation of minorities. Secondly, there's the first speaker posited us the benefits of fulfilling self-defense and how you're going to be, as a person who is being failed by the government, you put yourself in self-defense, right? also three responses. A, we think that at the end of the day, there is no tangible benefit that you get out of self-defense, especially when the government didn't actually oppress you tangibly. But B, we think that even if that is not true, it's still not fulfilled on side governments because of A, the failure of these actually being inherent and the fact that you could possibly fail in terms of it, and therefore self-defense is going to be completely useless anyways. But B, it's not self-defense if no one justifies it at the end of the day, and if government and if the citizens think that you're just being a violent person, just going on a rant at the end of the day, that's not something which is could be classified as self-defense at the end of the day, right? But see, even if at the end of the day somehow they manage to get self-defense, it's worse on side proposition because you're making yourself like a one versus everyone situation where you're just putting yourself in the fact that, oh, I'm the one who has to be protected here, focus on me. But rather, on side opposition, we're going to be proving to you why it's better on our side of the house. But thirdly, on their points of the efficacy of protection, well, let's compare protection on their side of the house, for example. We think that at the end of the day, if you notice what happened in Russia after the USSR broken, there were several insurgencies that happened, and what happened was that several of these insurgencies were positively oppressed by the governments at the end of the day. We think that this is a tendency of the government in the fact that if you are an insurgency, the fact is you want to maintain your power, and therefore, if you're just insurgency at the end of the day, you're just going to be oppressed, right? But even if it does happen, even if they manage to, get some sort of protection to these minorities at the end of the day, it always manifests in the side effect of that you're going to be having prejudice against these minorities as well, because you have to do it through violence, and therefore people are always going to be characterizing you as someone who is justifying violence even at the means of protecting yourself. You can't do it through democratic means, for example. But comparatively, on side opposition, we're positing to you the fact that we're giving you a voice of the government. You're giving you the voice of the parliament for you to be able to ease your concerns into everyone else in the parliament and get your pathos and get your concern, empathy towards everyone else, and therefore you're able to make them want to help you and make them at least sympathize with you, right? And even if at the end of the day there are no government policies that help you as a minority who was creating an insurgency, at least you're creating discourse and empathy throughout society and making sure that society knows that you've already tried your best by the government, and therefore there is a reason for them to be able to protect you. So let's reframe what this debate is about, ladies and gentlemen. 3 points of reframing. First of all, why did these insurgencies actually arise? There's three main things here. A, due to corruption of the government. B, due to the failure of democracy in proper aiding these minorities. And C, due to political disagreements through what these governments are applying in terms of international relations. For example, how there was an insurgency in Russia recently because they disagreed with the political war against Ukraine, for example. And secondly, on the context of these developing countries, it's actually amplified. Why? Because there is no specific governance, and that you trust the governments exactly because of that. And therefore, everything that is happening here is not justified and is not like giving you the sense of ease, the fact that all of these could happen. For example, how corruption is much more inherent in developing countries, for example. But secondly, they also have the need to industrialize and maintain their factories, maintain their human resources and stuff like that, and in order for you to be able to catch up with these developed countries, right? The prerequisite, thirdly, the prerequisite of any urgency in this debate is safety. In order for you to maintain your sustainability in the future, in order for you to maintain the fact that you could be a developed country in the future. But if side proposition only proposes violence, we question the fact that how you're going to be protecting factories, the safety of the citizens and how they want to progress in the future. Which is why, at the end of the day, we posited to you in our first speaker how democracy is one of the most important things in this debate. Representation of minorities is something that you have to have, because regardless of what happens on side proposition, you're not getting any sort of representation because you're just getting negative representation, and the fact that you have this sort of check and balance hardly rather than softly to the government at the end of the day. But moving on to our extension, which is on safety and polarization. The context of this argument is that there is going to be a war, there is going to be violence, there is always going to be that inside proposition. First of all, we never heard any sort of justification to this violence on side proposition. But beyond that, we think this manifests through hostages, for example. For example, if you're an insurgent, you might take some hostages from a working bank, for example, where they oppressed you. But even if it doesn't manifest in terms of directly harming these people, always manifests at least through crossfire, because you're going to be targeting the capital city, for example, or where the government parliament is mainly at. Those people were never part of that in the first place, and therefore they should be protected, but it always manifests in its terms of crossfire. We think that at the end of the day, it's significant for you to maintain safety and prevent polarization because you want to maintain political stability. If you don't maintain political stability, what happens is your country falls into chaos and no governance, right? But beyond that, we also want to maintain the citizens' concern on good governance. The fact that they have to be able to trust their government in order for them to be able to make some sort of tangible progress in the future. And these are the reasons why I believe safety is better on our side. 2 points. A, we think that we can always prerequisite this safety and less violence to these uncertainties as a term and condition as you being granted political power at the end of the day, right? But even if we believe that this is likely to happen because of two reasons. A, insurgency will be heard tangibly and they believe that they can actually create some change. But even if that doesn't happen, the a priori is that at least the insurgencies are going to be feeling acknowledged by the governments, right? But even if they're violent, ladies and gentlemen, at least at the end of the day, A, it's lessened violence on our side of the house because they're being heard and they don't want to do anything to make their voice less heard. But B, the government then holds the moral high ground to protect their people, even if at the end of the day these insurgencies are still violent, right? Comparatively, even if we play on proposition's best case, the damage is already done before the insurgency stops, and B, you are placing the citizens in a state of fear. So how will our side manifest benefits? A, through better focus on politics and citizens, because you're able to focus on that rather than war. Secondly, as previously explained, a better view of democracy. And thirdly, there's going to be more trust in government because you're preventing any sort of violence for all you of reasons so proud to oppose.
For that speech, factor and cost time, including second. So, next time, if you talk, I would like to welcome the first proposition. Now, before you
There is no possible justification of people that discriminate other people by just the differences aspect of life. In if you want to write, if you want to more human right exists in the in the end of the day, for the proposition. So moving to my question point, firstly, does the guarantee political power to violence have a good benefit in both sides in the end of the day? So the opposition, the big premise of opposition side, that they always say that, oh, it will be more harm if if we don't do the practice don't do the practice of a granted political power to violence to our sergeant group. So this is the things. What is the urgency of this case, that insurgent group is what the mainly target is, the group is the insurgent group is the authority, right? So this will be bad in the end of the day for the society and the government, because of what? Because of harm is more be happen in their side of the house. Because of what? Because in our side, at least we minimalize the harm happen in our side without doing anything that can uh, uh, provoke them to do the bad things in us in current status quo in the for the developing, especially in the developing countries. For example, you know that in the developing countries, in the developing countries, it's really there is some law that can have that can be the causes of this kind of group, right? But what will happen if the harm the harm will the harm they will harm the society, for example? It will not that it will not that be more superior because of what? You know that this kind of group doesn't even don't even have there's no bargaining power to compete with the authority, right? But that you know that uh, they just fight with their right in the society, right? Like it's different with the terrorists that yeah they're attack the society, the community, because they just did it for several reasons, for example. But in their side of the house, their big premise as opposition, it's the harm is more happen to the majority and minority, right? It will be more happen in their side, in their side, because of what? Because they because they just want to like do a political power to the our sergeant group, for example. But it's not that against the community. But look, in the government, in the in the developing country, for example. But in the developing country, for example, there is no there is a more multicultural community, for example. But this is and they said about always say it said about the safety of people, for example, the safety of people if don't use this practice of the political power, right? But in our side, we choose to oppose this motion because you know that we yeah it's more likely happen in our side that the safety of people will more happen in our side, because we just that we just not do just to oppose this practice that they can more that can be more cause more chaos in our in the end of the day, for example. But if if this is something happen in status quo just because the insurgent group in the that the main target is the authority. But if we do if we go against them, they will be more provoked uh, to more to more do more harm in the society, and against the society, for example, and fight with the society, for example. This is more harm, right? But what is the what our what we manifesting here, that we just we just want to what we want manifesting here is we want the better human right in the end of the day, right? That uh, it will be more happen in our side, because it's about the no thank you, it's about the discrimination, right? This is about how this insurgent group uh, 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 how this insurgent group act in the society, right? How their action will be more harm and more more uh, more do, getting chaos in the society, for example. and and our stand is here is clear, that we uh, we just want the better life from the society in the government, for example. This is good for the government also, because that the for example the um, the the multicultural social community, that the they already have uh, they already have mindset on society, that if if we don't if we don't against them, they will be not uh, they will be not like exploding and and fight for in the community, right? That's why we proud to propose.
For that speech, Dr. Rob spent 7 minutes and 12 seconds. Now, for our clinically opposition, I would like to welcome third opposition.
problem. Wait, two problems in the status quo, right? First of all, the motion clearly states that we live in developing country, which means that in this developing country, there are so many problems that people still struggling to have this stability in a country. For example, and particularly, we're going to specifically talk about the political instability in a developing country, right? That's why we want to give inclusive right for every people. We want to protect the minorities. There is actually the vulnerable actual in this debate in developing country, right? But second of all, we already told you in our first speaker that there is political instability in this current status quo, which really rely on war situation, for example. And secondly, this is also unstable because of there is unjustified merits in this politics. Why? Because first of all, we clearly state to you that there is a polarization of of these bigger majority people towards these minority people, for example, right? That's why it creates these insurgent groups in status quo, right? That's why both sides should agree that we against this polarization and discrimination, right? But second of all, there is also this dynasty politics in the status quo, where like what exists in the PDI, for example, that this generation, that this blood of dynasty politics is going to be benefiting the next generation, for example, and that is the word that we oppose at the very first place. But third of all, we already clearly state to you that sometimes there is some policy that is really unacceptable or unfair towards some certain actor. So that's why we need more progressive politics in this world. That's why we want to empower these insurgent groups in status quo, right? But secondly, we are going to restate what is the interest of these insurgent people, because two things. First of all, they want to have the equal rights, right? Because they understand that the culture in a developing country, for example, it is really diverse. So that's why they want the equal rights, that they don't want to be oppressed by the upper community, for example. But secondly, they also want to represent their people, to have a voice, to stand up, to speak up in parliament, and they want to give aspiration in parliament, right? Because exactly the one that they need is actually equal rights in society, and that the only mechanism that is going to be beneficial in this debate is by making a political a new law that is going to represent these minorities, that is going to protect the minorities, right? Okay, moving on to my clashes then. There are going to be two clashes in this debate. First of all, clash on the principle of democracy itself, and secondly, clash on the impact of vulnerable actor, which is the insurgent group itself, right? But okay, moving on to my first clash. What is already bring by the government side of the house is actually they just talk about the irrationality that they are going to blame the government in that kind of parliament, right? Okay, three responses. First of all, we don't understand what kind of methods, because they are too dismissive by saying that these insurgent people is actually irrational, and they're just only going to blame the government itself. They're too dismissive because we don't understand why then suddenly all people in insurgent group is actually rational. What is the there's a lack of explanation here, because even if they explain, we think that it is still untrue panels. Three reasons. Because first of all, we think that people who actually raise up their voice in parliament is already rational enough, because they're already past the age restriction, right? But secondly, there are also people who sent to this parliament is actually the representation of that insurgent marginalized people, so that they are the one who can give opinion. They are the one who has actually explain well in that parliament, right? But thirdly, we also state that these people do it is the moment that these insurgent people raise up their voice, stand up their voice, it means that they are already consented enough. They already they are also understand what is their responsibility that they're going to face, so far and so forth, and they already understand the consequences of them doing this, right? So we think that it is already clear at the very beginning. But even if yes, they explain that these people is actually rational. Two things, panels. First of all, if they talk about the emotionally unstable from these insurgent people, we know that it is still unrealistic at the very beginning with. Why? Because we think that every people, even if they are not part of this insurgent group, they are still have emotional part of emotional unstable when they are feeling oppressed, right? But when they are feeling harmed because it will also exist in their side, right? But secondly, even if yes, at the end of the day there will be still emotionally unstable in this parliament, within that there will still be check and balances, right? Because there is discourse, there is already discourse in society. There is going to discuss, there is going to criticize this political party, there is going to criticize this law and political problems at the very beginning, right? So we think that they cannot throw this, so because there is so many burden that we need to prove in this debate, right? But comparatively, we clearly state to you the principle of democracy, which is three things. First of all, the participation. Secondly, the representation, and thirdly, the accountability. And that's why I want to emphasize and we want to empower these insurgent people by giving them rights to participate in political work, right? Because we want them to have a voice. We want them to raise up and represent their own groups in the parliament, right? And what is the likelihood panels? Three things. First, we are going to give them space to stand up, to speak up. What is their intention? What is their proposal, right? But secondly, we are also going to let them represent their own group. For example, these Islamic people in Philippines, right? But third of all, we are also have empowering them and creating stigma in society that we are also human and we want some rights, because that is the principle of democracy itself, and it is morally then they want to have this equal treated right in society, right? But what is the manifestation here? Two things. First of all, the moment that we empower them, they will feel like they are also human, they are respected in that society of a country. Hence, there will be less possibility for them to attack and harm another people. But secondly, when they successfully represent their group, hence it will create more chance for them to be listened in that parliament, right? So what in our side is going to be what in the benefit under our side is going to be important. Three things. First of all, because we will create better law to minorities, more representing them, and hence the law is going to be more inclusive and acceptable. But secondly, there will be more accountability for each roles of political roles in the country. But third of all, we are going to prevent violation of certain group attack, right? And why didn't we win this clash? Because under even under our worst case scenario, when discrimination and polarization is going to be exist, we think that it is still okay anyway, because it already hinge on externalities, and it is not our burden to fully raise this discrimination, because the burden is too big, and the government also cannot fully erase this discrimination, right? But why don't we win these clash panels? Three things. Because first of all, we already proved that there will be better progressivity in a law and political making to inclusively cater minorities. But secondly, we are also going to create more progressive society to actually realize that there is a hierarchy of right, that we cannot do some that bad things, right? But third of all, we think that the benefit under our side is actually a priori, because there is because we are creating the sense of insurgent people being respected, has more trust towards the government itself. That's why we're very, very proud to oppose.
For that speech, your thoughts on being the 10 seconds. Now, to close the brief of opposition bench, I would like to welcome opposition.
Panels, if we take a holistic view of this debate, what happened on side government is their case basically hinged on two main points. A, the protection of human rights, and B, on how they're positing a burden to side opposition on how we have to prove that there's not going to be bad governance from these insurgency groups inside of parliament, right? We already responded to this very, very detailedly. Firstly, on human rights, they're claiming that there should be this protection of human rights because there is this thing in government's failures, for them to be able to protect these minorities from things like stereotypes, from things like economic aid, stuff like that. At the end of the day, what we think aside government is doing here is simply explaining the fact that there is this sort of thing, but we didn't actually get the main points or the main justification from side government, which is the fact that they never justified their counterfactual, which is violence. They didn't say anything on the points of the counterfactual giving political power to these insurgency groups, which is a violence taking over or violence targeting of authorities of like taking them hostage and like doing stuff like that. At the end of the day, we didn't get that at all from side governments, but even if we got that, we can assume the fact that this is still completely unjustified because of everything that side opposition took from their bullets said. For example, in our DPM, we told you how this is going to manifest inside of the world through only means of violence, through only means of like putting guns through the parliament and stuff like that, or taking these people hostages and stuff like that. But we also proved to you that the burden that they posited to side opposition, which is on the bad governance. We already claimed to you that there was going to be less irrationality once you've already placed in a sense of ease inside of this parliament. But even if you were still irrational, it's still a good check and balance for you to maintain the actual good of your people, which are being completely discriminated against by the government. We agree with the government on that point. On the other hand, what side opposition did in this debate was prove to you four things. First of all, we proved to you why democracy is inherently important for you to protect in developing countries. First, in our PM and our DPM, we told you exactly the fact that you have to protect democracy in order for you to become a developed country, in order for you to protect the interests of everyone involved, in order for you to liberalize and stuff like that, right? But secondly, on democratic safety, we already posited to you the 3 points of democracy, which is representation, participation, and accountability. We proved to you all three are being achieved on our side of the house. Why? Because we're making these minorities participate inside of this democracy by giving them political parties, giving them political power. B, we already claimed to you that they're being represented because they have a place inside of parliament. And C, we're giving you accountability so that everyone in democracy, in the citizens, can make sure that they are doing the best that they can in order for them to represent the people that they represent, and rather than them taking on like an extremist point of view, which is going to be inherently bad for everyone involved, right? But thirdly, we already told you that this democratic means as a way to protect these minorities is inherently efficient. Why? Because we proved to you that democracy is going to be much better as a way for you to get a good side of the citizens, rather than you being stigmatized and being prejudiced against by everyone, right? Regardless of what happens on side government, we think that this wins the debate anyways. But fourthly, on our extension, we already told you the posit of safety being a prerequisite for any urgency being in this debate. We didn't get anything on that. Any sort of safety on side government is going to be less and less good for the developing country. Everything that happens on safety and polarization, we already explained to you in our DPM, in the fact that these insurgency groups are only going to be tendency to have to become more violent because of the very fact that they're not being represented in government. But if they were in government, they're going to have a tendency to be less violent because they are being heard, and even if they aren't, they're being acknowledged. For all the above reasons, so proud to oppose.
Panels in our side of the house, we already said that the contribution for the contribution for the politics from this violent insurgent groups is not going to be like rational kind of things, because firstly it will be harmful for them on the point of view for on the point of view because on the point of view of they themselves, because it will make them to be the minority of the for the parliamentary, and they will be facing some kind of struggle to then completely completely stable in this in the political parliamentary. But then why is in our side it is better to not to not granting political power to the violent insurgent groups. It has already been said in our side of the house that granting political power to the violent insurgent groups will only be harmful, because there are the minorities, and having them and having them in in there without even communication before will only make this violent insurgent groups will be more to be like have the discrimination rather than having them communication first. So in our side of the house, instead of granting the political power to this violent insurgent group,
groups, we choose to then having them to communicate, to tell actually what is the problem to them. They mainly targets the authority with the violence actually, because directly granting them political power to this groups will only make them to having the feeling of superiority, and they will feel like finally I can be free, and finally and finally I can have the places to then be more and more power, and it will make them and it will make them to not to be harmful to the political of especially in developing countries, because in developing countries their political is unstable, so letting them in will make the political more unstable. As well said from the opposition team, we feel like it is more worse in our side, because because this this kind of acts is this kind of acts will only make this insurgent groups to make this developing countries politics to be more harmful, and their act is more harmful, and that is why in our side of the house we better not to granting them political power, and we already explain on why is it actually matter to give why is it actually bad to grant them political power. But um the 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 in our side of the house already proving to you that the government having the obligation to them there to then them having them to then solve this problem, rather than having obligation to then giving to then granting them the political power, because this kind of acts is only making them more and more having the violence, because they are giving the power to then control the politics. They are giving the power to then make them more feel superior, and then this only will make it more harm rather than good, and it will make this kind of things will make better, especially in the developing country. Thank you.